Chapter 21. Everything slows. I see a second person at the top of the stairs. Sam yelps in surprise and I turn to him, silence filling my ears with the discordant hum that comes with slow motion. The man behind him gives him a hard shove that causes his feet to leave the ground, and, when he hits, it will be at the bottom of the stairs, where the concrete floor awaits. I watch him sail through the air, flailing his arms, with a look of terror on his anguished face. Without giving it a single thought, my instinct takes over and I lift my hands at the very last second and catch him, his head a mere 2 inches above the basement floor. I set him down gently. "Shit," Henry says. Sam sits up and crawls backwards like a crab until he reaches the cinder block wall. His eyes are wide open, staring at the steps, his mouth moving but no words coming out. The figure who pushed him stands at the top of the stairs trying to figure out, like Sam, what just happened. It must be the third one. "Sam, I tried to," I say. The man at the top of the stairs turns and tries to sprint away but I force him down 2 of the stairs. Sam looks at the man being held by an unseen force, then looks at my one arm extended towards him. He is shocked and speechless. I grab the duct tape and lift the man in the air and carry him up to the 2nd floor, keeping him suspended the entire way. He yells obscenities while I tape him into a chair, but I hear none of them because my mind is racing to figure out what we will say to Sam about what just happened. "Shut up," I say. He unloads another string of cuss words. I decide I've had enough so I tape his mouth shut and walk back to the basement. Henry is standing near Sam, who is still sitting there, with the same blank stare on his face. "I don't get it," he says. "What just happened?" Henry and I look at each other. I shrug. "Tell me what's happening," Sam says, his voice pleading with us, tinged with desperation to know the truth, to know that he's not crazy and that he didn't imagine what he just saw. Henry sighs and shakes his head. Then he says, "What the hell's the point?" "The point in what?" I ask. He ignores me, and instead turns to Sam. He purses his lips together, looks at the man slumped in the chair to make sure he is still out, and then at Sam. "We aren't who you think we are," he says, and pauses. Sam stays silent, staring at Henry. I can't read his face, and I have no idea what Henry is about to tell him, if he will again make up some elaborate story or, for once, tell him the truth, and it's this latter that I'm truly hoping for. He looks at me and I nod my head in agreement. We came to Earth 10 years ago from a planet named Lorien. We came because it was destroyed by the inhabitants of another planet named Mogador. They destroyed Lorien for its resources because they had turned their own planet into a cesspool of decay. We came here to hide until we could return to Lorien, which we will one day do. But we were followed by the Mogadorians. They are here hunting us. And I believe they are here to take over Earth, and that is why I came here today, to find out a little more. Sam says nothing. Had it been me who told him as much, I'm sure that he wouldn't believe me, that he might become angry, but it is Henry who has told him, and there is a certain integrity within Henry that I have always felt, and I have no doubt that Sam feels it also. He looks over at me. "I was right, you're an alien. You weren't joking when you admitted it," Sam says to me. "Yes, you were right." He looks back at Henry. "And those stories you told me on Halloween?" "No. Those were just that," Henry says. "Ridiculous stories that made me smile when I stumbled across them on the internet, nothing more. But what I told you now is the honest truth." "Well," Sam says, and trails off, grasping for words. "What happened just now?" Henry nods to me. "John is in the process of developing certain powers. Telekinesis is one of them. When you were pushed, John saved you." Sam still smiles beside me, watching me. When I look at him he nods his head. "I knew you were different," he says. "Needless to say," Henry says to Sam, "you're going to have to be quiet about this." Then he looks over at me. We need information and we need to get out of here. They're probably nearby. The guys upstairs might still be conscious. Let's go talk to them. Henry walks over and picks the gun up from the floor and pulls the clip. It's full. He removes all the bullets and sets them on a nearby shelf, then snaps the clip back in and tucks the gun in the waistband of his jeans. I help Sam to his feet and we all go upstairs to the second floor. The man I brought up with my telekinesis is still struggling. The other one is sitting still. Henri walks over to him. You were warned, Henry says. The man nods. Now you're going to talk, Henry says, and he pulls the tape from the man's mouth. And if you don't? He pulls the slide back on the gun and aims it at the man's chest. Who visited you? There were 3 of them, he says. Well, there are 3 of us. Who cares? Keep talking. They told me if you showed up and I said anything, they'd kill me, the man says. I won't tell you anything more. Henry presses the barrel of the gun against the man's forehead. For some reason it makes me uncomfortable. I reach out and move the gun down so it points only at the floor. Henry looks at me curiously. There are other ways, I say. Henry shrugs and sets the gun down. The floor is yours, he says. I stand 5 feet in front of the man. He looks at me with fear. He is heavy, but after catching Sam as he sailed through the air, I know that I can lift him. I hold my arms out, my body straining in concentration. Nothing at first, and then very slowly he begins to rise off the floor. The man struggles but he is taped to the chair and there is nothing he can do. I concentrate with everything I have, and yet in my peripheral vision I can see that Henry is smiling proudly, and that Sam is, too. Yesterday I couldn't lift a tennis ball, now I'm lifting a chair with a 200-pound man sitting in it. How quickly the legacy has developed. When I have raised him to face level, I flip the chair over and he hangs upside down. Come on. He yells. Start talking. No. He yells. They said they'd kill me. I let go of the chair and it falls. The man screams but I catch him before he hits the ground. I raise him back up. There were 3 of them. He yells, talking fast. They showed up the same day we sent out the magazines. They showed up that night. What did they look like? Henry asks. Like ghosts. They were pale, almost like albinos. They wore sunglasses, but when we wouldn't talk one of them took the sunglasses off. They had black eyes and pointy teeth, but they didn't look natural like an animal's would. Theirs looked as though they had been broken and chiseled. They all wore long coats and hats like some shit out of an old spy movie. What the hell more do you want? Why did they come? They wanted to know our source for the story. We told them. A man had called, said he had an exclusive for us, starting raging about a group of aliens that wanted to destroy our civilization. But he called on the day we were printing, so instead of writing the full story, we put in a small quip and said more to follow next month. He talked so fast that we hardly grasped what he was saying. We were planning on calling him the next night, only that didn't happen, because the Mogadorians showed up instead. How did you know they were Mogadorians? What the hell else could they have been? We wrote a story about the Mogadorian race of aliens and lo and behold a group of aliens shows up on our doorstep the same day wanting to know where we got the story. It wasn't hard to figure out. The man is heavy and I'm having trouble holding him. My forehead is beaded with sweat and it's a struggle to breathe. I flip him back over, begin to lower him. When he is within a foot of the floor I drop him the rest of the way and he lands with an oomph. I bend over with my hands on my knees to catch my breath. What the hell, man? I'm answering your questions, he says. I'm sorry, I say. You're too heavy. And that's the only time they came? Says Henry. The man shakes his head. They came back. Why? To make sure we didn't print anything else. I don't think they trusted us, but the man who called us never answered his phone again. so we had nothing else to print. What happened to him? What do you think happened? The man asks. Henry nods. So they knew where he lived? They had the phone number we were supposed to call him back on. I'm sure they could have figured it out. Did they threaten you? Hell, yes. They trashed our office. They screwed with my mind. I haven't been the same since. What did they do to your mind? He closes his eyes and takes another deep breath. They didn't even look real, he says. I mean, here are these three men standing in front of us talking in deep, raspy voices, all in trench coats and hats and sunglasses even though it was nighttime. It looked like they were dressed up for a Halloween party or something. They looked funny and out of place, so at first I laughed at them, he says, his voice trailing off. But the second I laughed I knew I had made a mistake. The other two Mogadorians started towards me with their sunglasses off. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. Those eyes. I had to look, as though something was pulling me there. It was like seeing death. My own death, and the deaths of all the people I know and love. Things weren't so funny anymore. Not only did I have to witness the deaths, but I could feel them, too. The uncertainty. The pain. The complete and utter terror. I wasn't in that room anymore. And then came things I've always feared as a kid, images of stuffed animals that came to life, with sharp teeth as mouths, razor blades for claws. The usual stuff all kids are afraid of. Werewolves. Demonic clowns. Giant spiders. I viewed them all through the eyes of a child, and they absolutely terrified me. And every time one of those things bit into me, I could feel its teeth rip the flesh from my body. I could feel the blood pour from the wounds. I couldn't stop screaming. Did you try to fight back at all? They had two of these little weasel-looking things, fat, with short legs. No bigger than a dog. They were frothing at the mouth. One of the men was holding them on a leash, but you could tell they were hungry for us. They said they would turn them loose if we resisted. I'm telling you, man, these things weren't from Earth. If they were dogs, big deal, we would have fought back. But I think those things would have eaten us whole despite our size. And they were pulling against the leash, growling, trying to get to us. So you talked? Yes. When did they come back? The night before the next magazine went out, a little over a week ago. Henry gives me a concerned look. Only 1 week ago the Mogadorians were within 100 miles of where we live. They could still be here somewhere, maybe monitoring the paper. Perhaps that is why Henry has felt their presence of late. Sam stands beside me, taking everything in. Why didn't they just kill you like they did your source? How the hell do I know? Maybe because we publish a respectable paper. How did the man who called know about the Mogadorians? He said he had captured one of them and tortured it. Where? I don't know. His phone number was from the area code near Columbus. So north of here. Maybe 60 or 80 miles north. You spoke to him? Yeah. And I wasn't sure if he was crazy or not, but we had heard rumors about something like this before. He started talking about them wanting to wipe out civilization as we know it, and sometimes he talked so fast that it was hard to make sense of anything he said. One thing he kept repeating was that they were here hunting something, or somebody. Then he started spouting numbers. My eyes opened wide. What numbers? What did they mean? I have no idea. Like I said, he was talking so fast that it was all we could do to write it all down. You wrote while he talked? Henry says. Of course we did. We're journalists, he says incredulously. Do you think we make up the stories we write? Yeah, I do, says Henry. Do you still have the notes that you wrote? I say. He looks at me and nods. I'm telling you, they're worthless. Most of what I wrote are scribbles on their plan to destroy the human race. I need to see them, I nearly bellow. Where are they? He motions towards a desk against one of the walls. On the desk. On sticky notes. I walk over to the desk, which is covered with papers, and start looking through the sticky notes. I find some very vague notes on the Mogadorians' hope to conquer Earth. Nothing concrete, no plans or details, just a few indistinct words. Overpopulation. Earth's resources. Biological warfare. The planet Mogador. I come to the note I'm looking for. I read it carefully 3 or 4 times. Planet Lorien. The Loric. 1 to 3 dead. 4. 7 trailed in Spain. 9 on the run in SAR. What is he talking about? What do these numbers have to do with invading Earth? Why is there a question mark after the number 4? I ask. Because he said something about it, but he talked too fast and I didn't get it. You've got to be kidding me. He shakes his head. I sigh. Just my luck, I think. The one thing said about me is the one thing that wasn't written. What does SAR mean? I ask. South America. Did he say where in South America? No. I nod, stare at the slip of paper. I wish I could have heard the conversation, that I could have asked questions of my own. Do the Mogadorians really know where 7 is? Are they really following him or her? If so, the Loric charm still holds. I fold the sticky notes and slip them into my back pocket. Do you know what the numbers mean? He asks. I shake my head. I have no idea. I don't believe you, he says. Shut up, Sam says, and pokes him in the gut with the heavy end of the bat. Is there anything else you can tell me? I ask. He thinks about it for a moment, then says, I think bright light bothers them. It seemed to cause them pain when they took their sunglasses off. We hear a noise downstairs. Like someone trying to slowly open the door. We look at each other. I look to the man in the chair. Who is that? I quietly say. Them. What? They said they'd be watching. That they knew someone might be coming. We hear quiet footsteps on the first floor. Henry and Sam look at each other, both terrified. Why didn't you tell us? They said they'd kill me. And my family. I run to the window, look out the back. We're on the 2nd floor. It's a 20-foot drop to the ground. There's a fence around the yard. 8 feet of wood slats. I move quickly back to the stairs, and peer down. I see 3 huge figures, in long black trench coats, black hats, and sunglasses. They're carrying long gleaming swords. There's no way we're going to make it down the stairs. My legacies are growing stronger, but they aren't strong enough to take on 3 Mogadorians. The only way out is through one of the windows or over a small porch at the front of the room. The windows are smaller, but the backyard will allow us to escape unseen. If we go out the front, we will most likely be visible. I hear noise coming from the basement and the Mogadorians talking to each other in an ugly, guttural language. 2 of them move towards the basement while the 3rd starts walking towards the stairs that lead to us. I have a second or 2 to act. The windows will break if we go through them. Our only chance is the doors leading to the 2nd floor porch. I open them using telekinesis. It's black outside. I hear footsteps coming up the stairs. I pull Sam and Henry over to me and I throw each of them over my shoulders like sacks of potatoes. What are you doing? Whispers Henry. I have no idea, I say. But I hope it works. Just as I see the top of the first Mogadorian's hat, I sprint towards the doors and right before the ledge of the porch, I jump. We go flying into the night sky. For 2 or 3 seconds we're floating. I see cars moving down the street beneath us. I see people on the sidewalk. I don't know where we're going to land, or if my body will support all the weight I'm carrying when we do. When we hit the roof of a house across the street I collapse, with Sam and Henry on top of me. I get my breath knocked out of me, and it feels like my legs are broken. Sam starts to stand, but Henry keeps him down. He drags me to the far end of the roof and asks if I can use my telekinesis to get him and Sam onto the ground. I can and I do. He tells me I need to jump. I stand on legs that are wobbly and still hurt, and just before I jump, I turn and see the 3 Mogadorians are standing on the porch across the street, looking confused. Their swords are gleaming. Without a second to spare, we got away without them seeing us. We get to Sam's truck. Henry and Sam have to help me walk. Bernie is there waiting for us. We decide to leave Henry's truck because they most likely know what it looks like and would track it. We pull out of Athens and Henry starts driving back to Paradise, which it really might be after the night we just had. Henry starts from the beginning, telling Sam everything. He doesn't stop until we are pulling into our driveway. It's still dark. Sam looks over at me. Unbelievable, he says, and smiles. It's the coolest thing I've ever heard of. I look at him and I see the validation he has always looked for in his life, an affirmation that the time he spent with his nose in the conspiracy rags, looking for clues to his father's disappearance, wasn't in vain. Are you really resistant to fire? He asks. Yes, I say. God, that's awesome. Thanks, Sam. Can you fly? He asks. At first I think he is joking, but then I see that he isn't. I can't fly. I'm resistant to fire and can turn my hands into lights. I have telekinesis, which I only learned to use yesterday. More legacies are supposed to come soon. We think so, anyhow. But I have no idea what they will be until they actually develop. I hope you learn to make yourself invisible, Sam says. My grandfather could. And anything he touched also became invisible. Seriously? Yes. He starts laughing. I still can't believe you two drove all the way to Athens by yourselves, Henry says. You guys are really something. When we stopped for gas I saw that the plates have been expired for 4 years. I really don't see how you made it without getting stopped. Well, you can count on me from now on, says Sam. I'll do whatever it takes to help stop them. Especially because I bet they're the ones who took my dad. Thanks, Sam, says Henry. The most important thing you could do is stay quiet with our secret. If anyone else finds out about this it could lead to our deaths. Don't worry. I'll never tell anyone. I don't want John using his powers on me. We laugh and thank Sam again and he pulls away. Henry and I go inside. Even though I slept on the drive back, I'm still exhausted. I lie down on the couch. Henry sits in a chair across from me. Sam won't say anything, I say. He doesn't respond, just stares at the floor. They don't know we're here, I say. He looks up at me. They don't, I say. If they knew they'd be following us now. He stays silent. I can't take it. I'm not leaving Ohio on nothing more than speculation. Henry stands. I'm happy that you've made a friend, and I think Sarah is great. But we can't stay. I'm going to start packing, he says. No. When we're packed I'll go into town and buy a new truck. We need to get out of here. They might not have followed us, but they know how close they were at catching us, and that we might still be nearby. I believe the man who called the magazine did in fact capture one of them. That was his story, that he captured one and tortured it until it talked and then he killed it. We don't know what kind of tracking technology they have, but I don't think it will take them long to find us. And when they do, we'll die. Your legacies are emerging, and your strength is growing, but you're nowhere near ready to fight them. He walks out of the room. I sit up. I don't want to leave. I have a real friend for the first time in my life. A friend who knows what I am and isn't scared, doesn't think I'm a freak. A friend who is willing to fight with me, and go into danger with me. And I have a girlfriend. Someone who wants to be with me, even without knowing who I am. Someone who makes me happy, someone I would fight for, or go into danger in order to protect. My legacies haven't all emerged yet, but enough of them have. I took down 3 grown men. They didn't stand a chance. It was like fighting with little kids. I could do anything I wanted to them. We also now know that humans can also fight, and capture, and hurt, and kill Mogadorians. If they can, then I definitely can. I don't want to leave. I have a friend, and I have a girlfriend. I am not going to leave. Henry walks back out of his room. He is carrying the Lorien chest that is our most prized possession. Henry, I say. Yes. We're not leaving. Yes we are. You can if you want, but I'll go live with Sam. I'm not leaving. This is not your decision to make. It's not? I thought I was the one being hunted. I thought I was the one in danger. You could walk away right now and the Mogadorians would never look for you. You could live a nice, long, normal life. You could do whatever you want. I can't. They will always be after me. They will always be trying to find me and kill me. I'm 15 years old. I'm not a kid anymore. It is my decision to make. He stares at me for a minute. That was a good speech, but it doesn't change anything. Pack your stuff. We're leaving. I raise my hand and pointed at him and lift him off the ground. He's so shocked that he doesn't say anything. I stand and move him into the corner of the room, up near the ceiling. We're staying, I say. Put me down, John. I'll put you down when you agree to stay. It's too dangerous. We don't know that. They're not in paradise. They might not have any idea where we are. Put me down. Not until you agree to stay. Put me down. I don't say anything back. I just hold him there. He struggles, tries to push off the wall and the ceiling, but he can't move. My power holds him in place. And I feel strong doing it. Stronger than I've ever felt in my life. I am not leaving. I am not running. I love my life in paradise. I love having a real friend, and I love my girlfriend. I'm ready to fight for what I love, be it with the Mogadorians, or be it with Henry. You know you're not coming down until I bring you down. You're acting like a child. No, I'm acting like someone who is starting to realize who he is and what he can do. And you're really going to keep me up here? Until I fall asleep or get tired, but I'll just do it again once I get some rest. Fine. We can stay. With certain conditions. What? Put me down and we'll talk about it. I lower him, set him on the floor. He hugs me. I'm surprised. I expected him to be pissed. He lets go of me and we sit down on the couch. I'm proud of how far you've come. I've spent many years waiting and preparing for these things to happen, for your legacies to arrive. You know my entire life is devoted to keeping you safe, and making you strong. I would never forgive myself if something happened to you. If you died on my watch, I'm not sure how I would go on. In time the Mogadorians will catch up with us. I want to be ready for them when they come. I don't think you are yet, even though you do. You have a long way to go. We can stay here, for now, if you agree that training comes first. Before Sarah, before Sam, before everything. And at the first sign that they're nearby, or are on our trail, we leave. No questions asked, no fighting about it, no levitating me up to the ceiling and holding me there. Deal, I say, and smile. End of chapter 22. Chapter 22. Winter comes early and with full force to Paradise, Ohio. First the wind, then the cold, then the snow. Light dustings to start, then a storm blows through and buries the land so that the scraping sound of snowplows is as consistently heard as the wind itself, leaving a coat of salt over everything. School is cancelled for 2 days. The snow near the roads segues from white to dingy black and eventually melts to standing puddles of slush that refuse to drain. Henri and I spend my time off training, indoors, outdoors. I can now juggle 3 balls without touching them, which also means I can lift more than one thing at a time. The heavier and larger objects have come, the kitchen table, The snowblower we bought the week before, our new truck, which looks almost exactly like the old one and like millions of other pickup trucks in America. If I can lift it physically, with my body, then I can lift it with my mind. Henri believes that the strength of my mind will eventually transcend that of my body. In the backyard the trees stand sentinel around us, frozen branches like figurines of hollow glass, an inch of a fine white powder piled atop each one. The snow is up to our knees aside from the small patch Henri has cleared away. Bernie Koza sits watching from the back porch. Even he wants nothing to do with the snow. "Are you sure about this?" I ask. "You need to learn to embrace it," Henri says. Over his shoulder, watching with morbid curiosity, stands Sam. It is his first time watching me train. "How long will this burn?" I ask. "I don't know. I am wearing a highly combustible suit made mostly of natural fibers soaked in oils, some of which are slow burning, some of which are not. I want to set it on fire just to be rid of the smells that are making my eyes water." I take a deep breath. "Are you ready?" he asks. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Don't breathe. You're not immune to the smoke or fumes and your internal organs will burn." "This seems foolish to me," I say. "It's part of your training. Grace under pressure. You need to learn to multitask while consumed in flames." "But why?" "Because when the battle comes, we're going to be greatly outnumbered. Fire will be one of your great allies in war. You need to learn to fight while burning." "Ugh. If you get in trouble, jump into the snow and start rolling." I look at Sam, who has a big grin spread across his face. He is holding a red fire extinguisher in his hand just in case it's needed. "I know," I say. Everyone is silent while Henri messes with the matches. "You look like Sasquatch wearing that suit," Sam says. "Eat it, Sam," I say. "Here we go," says Henri. I take a deep breath just before he touches a match to the suit. Fire sweeps across my body. It feels unnatural for me to keep my eyes open, but I do. I look up. The fire rises 8 feet above me. The whole world is shrouded in shades of orange, red, yellow that dance in my line of sight. I can feel the heat, but only slightly as one feels the sun's rays on a summer day. Nothing more than that. "Go!" Henri yells. I hold my arms out to my sides, eyes wide open, breath held. I feel as though I'm hovering. I enter the deep snow and it begins to sizzle and melt underfoot, a slight steam rising while I walk. I reach my right hand forward and lift a cinder block, which feels heavier than normal. Is it because I'm not breathing? Is it the stress of the fire? "Don't waste time," Henri yells. I hurl the block as hard as I can against a dead tree 50 feet away. The force causes it to smash into a million little pieces, leaving an indentation in the wood. Then I raise 3 tennis balls soaked in gasoline. I juggle them in midair, one over the other. I bring them in towards my body. They catch fire, and still I juggle them, and while doing so I lift a long, thin broomstick. I close my eyes. My body is warm. I wonder if I'm sweating. If I am, the sweat must be evaporating the second it reaches the skin's surface. I grit my teeth, open my eyes, thrust my body forward and direct all of my powers into the stick's very core. It explodes, splintering into small bits. I don't let any of them fall to the ground. Instead I keep them suspended, collectively looking like a cloud of dust hovering in midair. I pull them to me and let them burn. The wood pops through the flicker and hum of the flames. I force them back together into a tightly compacted spear of fire that looks as though it has sprung straight from the depths of hell. "Perfect!" Henri yells. 1 minute has passed. My lungs begin to burn from the fire, from my breath still held. I put everything that I am into the spear and I hurl it so hard that it speeds through the air like a bullet and hits the tree, and hundreds of tiny fires spread throughout the vicinity and extinguish almost immediately. I had hoped the dead wood would catch fire, but it does not. I have also dropped the tennis balls. They sizzle in the snow 5 feet away from me. Forget the balls, Henry yells. The tree. Get the tree. The dead wood looks ghastly with its arthritic limbs silhouetted against the world of white beyond it. I close my eyes. I can't hold my breath much longer. Frustration and anger begin to form, fueled by the fire and the discomfort of the suit and the tasks that are left undone. I focus on the large branch coming off the tree's trunk and I try to break that branch away, but it won't come. I grit my teeth and furrow my brows, and finally a loud snap rings through the air like a shotgun blast and the branch comes sailing towards me. I catch it in my hands and hold it straight above me. Let it burn, I think. It must be 20 feet long. It finally catches fire and I lift it into the air 40 or 50 feet above me and, without touching it, I drive it straight into the ground as though I'm staking my claim like some old-world swordsman standing atop the hill after winning the war. The stick totters back and forth smoking, flames dancing along the upper half of it. I open my mouth and instinctively take a breath, and the flames come rushing in. An instant burning spreads throughout my body. I'm so shocked and it hurts so much that I don't know what to do. The snow. The snow. Henry yells. I dive in headfirst and begin rolling. The fire goes out almost immediately, but I keep rolling and the sizzle of snow touching the tattered suit is all I hear while wisps of steam and smoke rise off of me. And then Sam finally pulls the clip from the extinguisher and unloads with a thick powder that makes it even harder to breathe. No, I yell. He stops. I lie there trying to catch my breath, but each inhalation brings about a pain in my lungs that reverberates throughout my body. Damn, John. You weren't supposed to breathe, Henry says, standing over me. I couldn't help it. Are you okay? Sam asks. My lungs are burning. Everything is blurry, but slowly the world comes into focus. I lie there looking up into the low grey sky at the flakes of snow sifting sullenly down upon us. How'd I do? Not bad for your first try. We're going to do it again, aren't we? In time, yes. That was wicked cool, Sam says. I sigh, then take a deep, labored breath. That sucked. You did well for your first time, Henry says. You can't expect everything to come easily. I nod from the ground. I lie there a good minute or two, and then Henri extends a hand and helps me up, bringing about the end of training for the day. I wake in the middle of the night 2 days later, 2:57 on the clock. I can hear Henry working at the kitchen table. I crawl out of bed and walk out of the room. He is hunched over a document, wearing bifocals and holding some sort of stamp with a pair of tweezers. He looks up at me. What are you doing? I ask. Creating forms for you. For what? I got to thinking about you and Sam driving down to get me. I think it's foolish of us to keep using your real age when we can just as easily change it according to our needs. I pick up a birth certificate that he has already finished. The name written is James Hughes. The date of birth would make me a year older. I'd be 16 and able to drive. Then I bend over and look at the one he is in the process of creating. The name listed is Joby Frey, age 18, a legal adult. Why didn't we ever think to do this before? I ask. We never had reason to. Papers of different shapes and sizes and densities are scattered across the table, a large printer off to the side. Bottles of ink, rubber stamps, notary stamps, metal plate-looking things, various tools that look as though they belong in a dentist's office. The process of document creation has always remained foreign to me. Are we going to change my age now? Henry shakes his head. It's too late to change your age in paradise. These are mostly for the future. Who knows what will happen that will give you reason to use them. The thought of moving in the future makes me nauseous. I would rather stay 15 and unable to drive forever than move someplace new. Sarah returns from Colorado a week before Christmas. I haven't seen her in 8 days. It feels as though it's been a month. The van drops all the girls off at the school and one of her friends drives her straight to my house without first taking her home. When I hear the tires come up the drive, I meet her with a hug and a kiss, and I lift her off the ground and whirl her in the air. She has just been in a plane and a car for 10 hours, and she is wearing sweatpants and no makeup with her hair pulled into a ponytail, and yet she is the most beautiful girl I have ever seen, and I don't want to let go of her. We stare into each other's eyes beneath the moonlight, and all either of us can do is smile. "Did you miss me?" she asks. "Every second of every day." She kisses the tip of my nose. "I missed you, too." "So do the animals have a shelter again?" I ask. "Oh, John, it was amazing. I wish you could have been there. There were probably 30 people helping out at all times, around the clock. The building went up so fast, and it's so much nicer than it was before. We built this cat tree in one of the corners, and I swear the whole time we were there were cats playing on it." I smile. It sounds great. I wish I could have been there, too. I take her bag and we walk into the house together. "Where's Henry?" she asks. "Grocery shopping. He left about 10 minutes ago." She walks through the living room and drops her coat onto the back of a chair on her way into my bedroom. She sits on the edge of my bed and kicks her shoes off. "What should we do?" she asks. I stand there watching her. She is wearing a red hooded sweatshirt with a zipper down the front. It is only halfway zipped. She smiles and looks at me through the tops of her eyes. "Come here," she says, and holds her hand out to me. I walk to her and she takes my hand in hers. She looks up at me and squints her eyes from the light shining overhead. I snap my fingers with my free hand and the light turns off. "How'd you do that?" "Magic," I say. I sit beside her. She tucks a few loose strands of hair behind her ear, then leans over and kisses me on the cheek. Then she cups my chin and pulls my head to hers and kisses me again, softly, delicately. My whole body tingles in response. She pulls away, her hand still on my cheek. She traces my brow with her thumb. "I really did miss you," she says. "Me, too." A silence passes between us. Sarah bites her lower lip. "I couldn't wait to get here," she says. "The whole time I was in Colorado, you were all I could think of. Even when playing with the animals, I was wishing you were there with me playing with them, too. And then when we finally left this morning, the entire trip was hell. Even though every mile we traveled was another mile, I was closer to you." She smiles, mostly with her eyes, her lips a thin upturned crescent that keeps her teeth hidden. She kisses me again, a kiss that starts as slow and lingering and goes from there. Both of us are sitting on the edge of the bed, her hand on the side of my face, mine on the small of her back. I can feel the tight contours beneath the tips of my fingers, can taste the berry gloss on her lips. I pull her to me. I feel as though I can't get close enough to her despite our bodies being pressed tightly together. My hand running up her back, the smooth porcelain feel of her skin. Her hands through my hair, both of us breathing heavily. We fall back on the bed, on our sides. Our eyes are closed. I keep opening mine to see her. The room is dark aside from the moonlight entering through the windows. She catches me watching her and we stop kissing. She puts her forehead to mine and stares at me. She places her hand on the back of my neck and pulls me to her, and all at once we're kissing again. Entangled. Meshed. Our arms tightly around the other. My mind clear of every plague that normally visits and every thought of other planets. My mind free of the hunt and pursuit by the Mogadorians. Sarah and I on the bed kissing each other, falling into each other. Nothing else in the world matters. And then the door opens in the living room. We both jump up. "Henry's home," I say. We stand and quickly brush the wrinkles from our clothes, smiling, a secret shared between us that makes us giggle as we walk out of the bedroom holding hands. Henry is setting a bag of groceries on the kitchen table. "Hi, Henry," Sarah says. He smiles at her. She lets go of my hand and walks over and hugs him, and they start talking about her trip to Colorado. I walk outside to get the rest of the groceries. I breathe in the cold air, try to shake my limbs free of the tension of what just happened, and the disappointment of Henry coming home when he did. I'm still breathing heavily as I grab the rest of the groceries and carry them into the house. Sarah is telling Henry about some of the cats that were at the shelter. And you didn't bring one of them back for us? Now Henry, you know I would have happily brought you one if you had told me, Sarah says, her arms folded across her chest with her hip cocked to the side. He smiles at her. I know you would have. Henry puts the groceries away and Sarah and I head out into the frigid air to go for a walk before her mom arrives to take her home. Bernie Koza comes with us. He takes the lead and runs ahead. Sarah and I hold hands, walking through the yard, the temperature slightly above freezing. The snow melting, the ground wet and muddy. Bernie Koza disappears for a time into the woods and then comes running back out. His bottom half is filthy. What time is your mom coming? I ask. She looks at her watch. 20 minutes. I nod. I'm so happy you're back. Me too. We go to the edge of the woods, but it is too dark for us to enter. We instead walk along the perimeter of the yard, hand in hand, occasionally stopping to kiss with the moon and stars as witnesses. Neither of us talks about what just happened, but it's obvious that it is on both of our minds. When we make the first lap, Sarah's mother pulls into the drive. She's 10 minutes early. Sarah runs up and hugs her. I walk inside and grab Sarah's bag. After we say goodbye, I walk to the road and watch their taillights recede in the distance. I stand outside for a while and then Bernie Koza and I go back into the house. Henry is halfway through making dinner. I give the dog a bath. When I'm finished, dinner is ready. We sit at the table and eat, not a word passing between us. I can't stop thinking of her. I stare blankly into my plate. I'm not hungry, but I try to force the food down anyhow. I manage a few bites, and then I push the plate out in front of me and I sit there in silence. So are you going to tell me? Henry asks. Tell you what? What's on your mind? I shrug. I don't know. He nods, goes back to eating. I close my eyes. I can still smell Sarah on the collar of my shirt, can still feel her hand on my cheek. Her lips to mine, the texture of her hair when I ran my hand through it. All I can think about is what she must be doing, and how I wish she was still here. Do you think it's possible for us to be loved? I ask. What are you talking about? By humans. Do you think we can be loved, like, truly be loved by them? I think they can love us the way they love each other, especially if they don't know what we are, but I don't think it's possible to love a human the way you would love a Lorik, he says. Why? Because deep down we're different from them. And we love differently. One of the gifts our planet gave us is to love completely. Without jealousy or insecurity or fear. Without pettiness. Without anger. You may have strong feelings for Sarah, but they aren't what you would feel for a Lorik girl. There aren't many Lorik girls available for me. Even more reason to be careful with Sarah. At some point, if we last long enough, we will need to regenerate our race and repopulate our planet. Obviously you're a long way from having to worry about that, but I couldn't count on Sarah being your partner. What happens if we try to have children with humans? It's happened many times before. Usually it results in an exceptional and gifted human. Some of the greatest figures in Earth's history were actually the product of humans and the Lorik, including Buddha, Aristotle, Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, Leonardo da Vinci, Isaac Newton, Thomas Jefferson, and Albert Einstein. Many of the ancient Greek gods, who most people believe were mythological, were actually the children of the humans and Lorik. Mainly because it was much more common then for us to be on this planet and we were helping them develop civilizations. Aphrodite, Apollo, Hermes, and Zeus were all real, and had one Loric parent. So it is possible. It was possible. In our current situation it's reckless and impractical. In fact, though I don't know her number, or have any idea where she is, one of the children who came to Earth with us was the daughter of your parents' best friends. They used to joke that it was fate that the two of you would end up together. They may well have been right. So what do I do? Enjoy your time with Sarah, but don't get too attached to her, and don't let her get too attached to you. Really? Trust me, John. If you never believe another word I say, then believe that. I believe all the words you say even if I don't want to. Henry winks at me. Good, he says. Afterwards I go into my room and call Sarah. I think about what Henry said to me before I do it, but I can't help myself. I am attached to her. I think I'm in love with her. We talk for 2 hours. It is midnight when the call ends. Then I lie in bed smiling through the darkness. End of chapter 22. Chapter 23. The day has grown dark. The warm night carries a soft wind and the sky is scattered with intermittent flashes of light, clouds turning to brilliant colors of blue and red and green. Fireworks at first. Fireworks that segue to something else, louder, more menacing, the oohs and ahs turning to shrieks and screams. A chaos erupts. People running, children crying. Me, standing in the middle of it all, watching without the benefit of being able to do anything to help. The soldiers and the beasts pour onto the scene from all directions as I have seen before, the continuous fall of bombs so loud that it hurts the ears, the reverberations felt in the pit of my stomach. So deafening it makes my teeth ache. Then the Loric charge back with such intensity, with such courage, that it makes me proud to be among them, to be one of them. Then I am gone, sweeping through the air at a rate that causes the world beneath to pass in a blur so that I can't focus on any one thing. When I stop I am standing on the tarmac of an airfield. A silver airship is 15 feet away and 40 or so people stand at the ramp leading up to its entrance. 2 people have already entered, standing in the doorway with their eyes on the sky, a very young girl and a woman Henry's age. And then I see myself, 4 years old, crying, shoulders slumped. A much younger version of Henry just behind me. He, too, is watching the sky. On bended knee in front of me is my grandmother, gripping me by the shoulders. My grandfather stands behind her, his face set hard, distracted, the lenses of his glasses gathering the light from the sky. Come back to us, you hear? Come back to us, my grandmother says, finishing speaking. I wish I could have heard the words that came before them. Up until now I have never remembered anything that was spoken to me that night. But now I have something. My 4-year-old self doesn't respond. My 4-year-old self is too scared. He doesn't understand what is happening, why there is urgency and fear in the eyes of everyone around him. My grandmother pulls me to her and then she lets go. She stands and turns her back to keep me from seeing her cry. My 4-year-old self knows that she is crying, but he doesn't know why. Next is my grandfather, who is covered in sweat, grime, and blood. He has clearly been fighting, and his face is twisted as though he is straining, ready to fight more, ready to go and do all he can in the struggle to survive. His, and the planet's. He drops to a knee as my grandmother did before him. For the first time I look around. Twisted heaps of metal, chunks of concrete, large holes in the ground where the bombs have fallen. Scattered fires, shattered glass, dirt, splintered trees. And in the middle of it all a single airship, unharmed, the one that we are boarding. We gotta go. Somebody yells out. A man, dark hair and eyes. I don't know who he is. Henry looks at him and nods. The children walk up the ramp. My grandfather fixes me with a hard stare. He opens his mouth to speak. But before the words come I am again swept away, hurled up through the air, the world below again passing in a blur. I try to make it out, but I am moving too fast. The only discernible sights are the bombs, continually falling, large displays of fire of all colors that sweep through the night sky, and the perpetual explosions that follow. Then I stop again. I am inside of a large, open building that I have never seen before. It is silent. The ceiling is domed. The floor is one great slab of concrete the size of a football field. There are no windows, but the sounds of the bombs still penetrate, echoing off the walls around me. Standing in the very middle of the building, tall and proud, alone, is a white rocket that extends all the way to the apex of the ceiling. Then a door slams open in the far corner. My head snaps around to it. Two men enter, frantic, talking quickly and loudly. All at once a herd of animals rush in behind the men. 15, give or take, continually changing shape. Some flying, some running, on two legs, then on four. Bringing up the rear, a third man follows and the door is shut. The first man reaches the spacecraft, opens a sort of hatch on the ship's bottom, and begins ushering the animals in. Go. Go. Up and in, he yells. The animals go, all of them changing their shapes in order to do so. Then the last animal enters and one of the men pulls himself in. The other two begin throwing bags and boxes up to him. It takes them a good 10 minutes to get everything on board. Then all three scatter around the rocket, preparing it. The men are sweating, moving frantically until everything is ready. Just before the three of them climb inside the rocket, someone runs up with a bundle that looks like a swaddled child, though I can't see well enough to tell. They take whatever it is and go inside. Then the door snaps shut behind them and is sealed. Minutes pass. The bombs must be just outside the walls now. And then from nowhere an explosion occurs inside the building and I see the beginnings of fire shoot from the bottom of the rocket, a fire that quickly grows, a fire that consumes everything inside the building. A fire that consumes even me. My eyes snap open. I am back home, in Ohio, lying in bed. The room is dark, but I can sense that I am not alone. A figure moves, a shadow thrown across the bed. I tense myself to it, ready to snap my lights on, ready to hurl it against the wall. You were talking, Henry says. In your sleep just now, you were talking. I turn on my lights. He is standing beside the bed, wearing pajamas, pants and a white t-shirt. His hair is tousled, his eyes are red with sleep. What was I saying? You said up and in, up and in. What was happening? I was just on Lorien. In a dream? I don't think so. I was there, just like before. What did you see? I scoot up the bed so my back rests against the wall. The animals, I say. What animals? In the spaceship I saw take off. The old one, at the museum. In the rocket that left after hours. I watched animals being loaded into it. Not many. 15, maybe. With 3 other Loric. I don't think they were guard. And something else. A bundle. It looked like a baby, but I couldn't tell. Why don't you think they were guard? They loaded the rocket with supplies, 50 or so boxes and duffel bags. They didn't use telekinesis. Into the rocket inside the museum? I think it was the museum. I was inside a large, domed building with nothing inside of it but a rocket. I can only assume it was the museum. Henri nods. If they worked at the museum then they would have been Sapan. Loading animals, I say. Animals that could change their shape. Chimera, Henry says. What? Chimera. Animals on Lorien that could change their shape. They were called chimera. Is that what Hadley was? I ask, remembering back to the vision I had a few weeks ago, the vision of playing in the yard of my elder's home when I was lifted in the air by the man wearing a silver and blue suit. Henri smiles. You remember Hadley? I nod. I've seen him the way that I've seen everything else. You're having the visions even when we're not training? Sometimes. How often? Henry, who cares about the visions? Why were they loading animals into the rocket? What was a baby doing with them? Or was it even a baby? Where did they go? What purpose could they possibly have had? Henry thinks about it a moment. He shifts the weight of his body to his right leg. Probably the same purpose we had. Think about it, John. How else could animals repopulate Lorien? They too would have to go to some sort of sanctuary. Everything was wiped out. Not just the people, but also the animals, and all plant life. Maybe the bundle was just another animal. A fragile one, or maybe a young one. Well, where would they go? What other sanctuary exists besides Earth? I think they went to one of the space stations. A rocket with Loric fuel would have been able to make it that far. Maybe they thought the invasion would be short-lived, and they thought they could wait it out. I mean, they would have been able to live on the space station for as long as their supplies lasted. There are space stations close to Lorien? Yes, 2 of them. Well, there were 2 of them. I know for sure the larger of the 2 was destroyed at the same time as the invasion. We lost contact with it less than 2 minutes after the first bomb fell. Why didn't you mention that before, when I first told you about the rocket? I had assumed that it was empty, that it went up in the air as a decoy. And I think that if one space station was destroyed, then the other was as well. Their trip, unfortunately, was probably done in vain, whatever their goal was. But what if they came back when their supplies ran out? Do you think they could survive on Lorien? I ask in desperation. I already know the answer, already know what Henry will say, but I ask anyway in order to hold on to some sort of hope that we aren't alone in all this. That maybe, somewhere far away, there are others like us, waiting, monitoring the planet so that they, too, might one day return and we won't be alone when we go back. No. There is no water there now. You saw that for yourself. Nothing but a barren wasteland. And nothing can survive without water. I sigh and scoot back down into the bed. I drop my head onto the pillow. What's the point in arguing? Henry is right and I know it. I saw it for myself. If the globes that he pulled from the chest are to be trusted, then Lorien is nothing more than wasteland, a dump. The planet still lives, but on the surface there is nothing. No water. No plants. No life. Nothing but dirt and rocks and the rubble of the civilization that once existed. Did you see anything else? Henry asks. I saw us on the day we left. All of us at the airship right before we took off. It was a sad day. I nod. Henry crosses his arms and gazes out the window, lost in thought. I take a deep breath. Where was your family during it all? I ask. My lights have been off for a good 2 or 3 minutes, but I can see the whites of Henri's eyes staring back at me. Not with me, not on that day, he says. We are both silent for a time and then Henri shifts his weight. Well, I better get back to bed, he says, bringing an end to the conversation. Get some sleep. After he leaves I lie there thinking of the animals, of the rocket, of Henry's family and how I'm sure he never got the chance to say goodbye to them. I know I won't be able to go back to sleep. I never can when the images visit me, when I feel Henry's sadness. It must be a thought constantly on his mind, as it would be for anyone who left under the same circumstances, leaving the only home you've ever known, all the while knowing you will never see the people you love again. I grab my cell phone and text Sarah. I always text her when I can't sleep, or she texts me if it's the other way around. Then we'll talk for as long as it takes to become tired. She calls me 20 seconds after I hit the send button. Hey, you, I answer. You can't sleep? No. What's the matter? She asks. She yawns on the other end of the line. Was just missing you is all. Been lying in bed staring at the ceiling for like an hour now. You're silly. You saw me like 6 hours ago. I wish you were still here, I say. She moans. I can hear her smile through the darkness. I roll to my side and hold the phone between my ear and the pillow. Well, I wish I was still there, too. We talk for 20 minutes. The last half of the call is both of us just lying there listening to the other breathe. I feel better after having talked to Sarah, but I find it even harder to fall back asleep. End of chapter 23. Chapter 24. For once, since we arrived in Ohio, things seem to slow for a time. School ends quietly and for winter break we have 11 days off. Sam and his mother spend most of it visiting his aunt in Illinois. Sarah stays home. We spend Christmas together. We kiss when the ball drops at midnight on New Year's Eve. Despite the snow and the cold, or maybe even in retaliation against it, we go for long walks through the woods behind my house, holding hands, kissing, breathing in the chilly air beneath the low gray skies of winter. We spend more and more time together. Not a day passes during that whole break that we don't see each other at least once. We walk hand in hand beneath an umbrella of white from the snow piled atop the tree branches overhead. She has her camera with her and occasionally stops to take pictures. Most of the snow on the ground lies undisturbed aside from the tracks we have made on the walk out. We follow them back now, Bernie Koza in the lead, darting in and out of the brambles, chasing rabbits into small groves and thickets of thorny bush, chasing squirrels up trees. Sarah wears a pair of black earmuffs. Her cheeks and the tip of her nose are red with the cold, making her eyes look bluer. I stare at her. "What?" she asks, smiling. "Just admiring the view." She rolls her eyes at me. For the most part the woods are dense aside from sporadic clearings we continually stumble upon. I'm not sure how far in any one direction the woods extend, but in all of our walks we have yet to reach their end. "I bet it's beautiful here in the summer," Sarah says. "We can probably picnic in the clearings." An ache forms in my chest. Summer is still 5 months away, and if Henry and I are here in May, we will have made it 7 months in Ohio. That is very nearly the longest we have ever stayed in one place. "Yeah, I agree." Sarah looks at me. "What?" I look at her questioningly. "What do you mean, what?" "That wasn't very convincing," she says. A mess of crows fly by overhead, squawking noisily. "I just wish it was summer now." "Me too. I can't believe we have to go back to school tomorrow." "Ugh, don't remind me." We enter another clearing, larger than the others, an almost perfect circle 100 feet in diameter. Sarah lets go of my hand, runs into the middle of it, and drops into the snow, laughing. She rolls to her back and begins making a snow angel. I drop beside her and do the same. The tips of our fingers just barely touch while we make the wings. We get up. "It's like we're holding wings," she says. "Is that possible?" I ask. "I mean, how would we fly if we're holding wings?" "Of course it's possible. Angels can do anything." Then she turns and nuzzles into me. Her cold face against my neck makes me squirm away from her. "Ugh! Your face is like ice." She laughs. "Come warm me up." I take her in my arms and kiss her beneath the open sky, the trees surrounding us. There are no sounds save the birds and the occasional pack of snow falling from the nearby branches. 2 cold faces pressed tightly together. Bernie Koza comes trotting up, out of breath, tongue dangling, tail wagging. He barks and sits in the snow staring at us, his head cocked to the side. "Bernie Koza, were you off chasing rabbits?" Sarah asks. He barks twice and runs over and jumps up on her. He barks again and pushes off and then looks up expectantly. She grabs a stick from the ground, shakes the snow off it, and then hurls it into the trees. He races after it and disappears from sight. He emerges from the trees 10 seconds later, but instead of returning to the clearing where he had exited it, he comes from the opposite side. Sarah and I both spin around to watch him. "How'd he do that?" she asks. "Don't know," I say. He's a peculiar dog. Did you hear that, Bernie Koza? He just called you peculiar. He drops the stick at her feet. We walk towards home, holding hands, the day nearing dusk. Bernie Koza trots beside us the whole way out, his head on a swivel as though ushering us along, keeping us safe from what may or may not lurk in the outer dark beyond our line of sight. 5 newspapers are stacked on the kitchen table, Ori at his computer, the overhead light on. Anything? I ask out of habit. Nothing more. There hasn't been a promising story in months, which is a good thing, but I can't help but always hope for something every time I ask. Actually, yes, I think so. I perk up, then walk around the table and look over Henri's shoulder at the computer screen. What? There was an earthquake in Argentina yesterday evening. A 16-year-old girl pulled an elderly man free from a pile of rubble in a tiny town near the coast. Number 9? Well, I certainly think she's one of us. Whether she's number 9 or not remains to be seen. Why? There's nothing really extraordinary about pulling a man from rubble. Look, Henry says, and then scrolls to the top of the article. There is a picture of a large slab of concrete at least a foot thick, 8 feet long and wide. This is what she lifted to save him. It must weigh 5 tons. And look at this, he says, and scrolls back to the bottom of the page. He highlights the very last sentence. It reads, Sofia Garcia could not be found for comment. I read the sentence 3 times. She couldn't be found, I say. Exactly. She didn't decline to comment, she simply couldn't be found. How did they know her name? It's a small town, less than a third the size of Paradise. Most everyone would know her name there. She left, didn't she? Henry nods. I think so. Probably before the paper was even published. That's the downfall of small towns, it's impossible to remain unnoticed. I sigh. Hard for the Mogadorians to go unnoticed too. Precisely. Sucks for her, I say, and stand up. Who knows what she must have left behind. Henry gives me a skeptical look, opens his mouth to say something, but then thinks better of it and goes back to the computer. I return to my bedroom. I pack my bag with a fresh change of clothes and the books I'll need for the day. Back to school. I'm not looking forward to it, though it'll be nice to see Sam again, whom I haven't seen in nearly 2 weeks. Okay, I say. I'm off. Have a good day. Be safe out there. See you this afternoon. Bernie Koza rushes out of the house ahead of me. He's a ball of energy this morning. I think he's come to look forward to our morning runs, and the fact that we haven't done one in a week and a half has him chomping at the bit to get back to it. He keeps up with me for most of the run. Once we make it I give him a good pet and scratch behind his ears. All right, boy, go home, I say. He turns and starts trotting back to the house. I take my time in the shower. By the time I finish, other students are beginning to arrive. I walk the hall, stop by my locker, then go to Sam's. I slap him on the back. It startles him, then he flashes a big toothy grin when he sees that it's me. I thought I was going to have to whip somebody's ass there for a minute, he says. Just me, my friend. How was Illinois? Ugh, he says, and rolls his eyes. My aunt made me drink tea and watch reruns of Little House on the Prairie nearly every day. I laugh. That sounds awful. It was, trust me, he says, and reaches into his bag. This was waiting in the mail when we got back. He hands me the latest issue of They Walk Among Us. I begin flipping through it. There is nothing on us or the Mogadorians, he says. Good, I say. They must fear us after you visited them. Yeah, right. Over Sam's shoulder I see that Sarah is coming our way. Mark James stops her in the middle of the hallway and hands her a few sheets of orange paper. Then she continues on her way. Hi, gorgeous, I say when she reaches us. She stands on her toes to kiss me. Her lips taste like strawberry lip balm. "Hi, Sam, how are you?" "Good. How are you?" he asks. He seems at ease with her now. Before the incident with Henry, which was a month and a half ago, being in Sarah's presence would have made him uncomfortable, and he wouldn't have been able to meet her eye or know what to do with his hands. But now he looks at her and smiles, speaking with confidence. "Good," she says. "I'm supposed to give you both one of these." She hands us each one of the orange sheets Mark just gave her. It's a party invitation for this upcoming Saturday night at his house. "I'm invited?" Sam asks. Sarah nods. "All three of us are." "Do you want to go?" I ask. "Maybe we could give it a shot." I nod. "You interested, Sam?" He looks past Sarah and me. I turn to see what he is looking at, or rather who. At a locker across the hall is Emily, the girl who was on the hayride with us, and who Sam has been pining for ever since. When she walks past she sees that Sam is watching her and she smiles politely. "Emily?" I say to Sam. "Emily what?" Sam asks, looking back at me. I look at Sarah. I think Sam likes Emily Knapp. "I do not," he says. "I could ask her to come to the party with us," Sarah says. "Do you think she would go?" Sam asks. Sarah looks at me. "Well, maybe I shouldn't invite her since Sam doesn't like her." Sam smiles. "Okay, fine. I don't know. She kept asking why you never called after the hayride. She kind of likes you." "That is true," I say. "I've heard her say it." "Why didn't you tell me?" says Sam. "You never asked." Sam looks down at the flyer. "So it's this Saturday?" "Yes." He looks up at me. I say we go. I shrug. I'm in. Henry is waiting for me when the final bell rings. As always, Bernie Koza is in the passenger seat, and when he sees me, his tail begins wagging 100 miles an hour. I jump into the truck. Henri puts it into gear and drives away. "There was a follow-up article on the girl in Argentina," Henry says. "And?" "Just a short article saying that she has disappeared. The mayor of the town is offering a modest reward for information on her whereabouts. It sounds like they believe she's been kidnapped." "Are you worried about the Mogadorians having gotten to her first?" "If she's 9, like the note we found indicated, and the Mogadorians were tracking her, it's a good thing that she vanished. And if she's been captured, the Mogadorians can't kill her, they can't even hurt her. That gives us hope. The good thing, aside from the news itself, is that I imagine every Mogadorian on Earth has poured into Argentina." Speaking of which, Sam had the latest tissue of They Walk Among Us today. "Was there anything in it?" "Nope. I didn't think there would be. Your levitation tricks seem to affect them rather profoundly." When we arrive home I change clothes and meet Henri in the backyard for our day of training. Working while consumed with fire has gotten easier. I don't get as flustered as I did on that first day. I can hold my breath longer, close to 4 minutes. I have more control over the objects I lift, and I can lift more of them at the same time. Little by little, the look of worry I saw on Henry's face during the first days has melted away. He nods more. He smiles more. On the days it goes really well he gets a crazed look in his eyes and he raises his arms in the air and yells, "Yes!" as loudly as he can. In that way I am gaining confidence in my legacies. The rest have yet to come, but I don't think they're far off. And the major one, whatever it will be. The anticipation of it keeps me up most nights. I want to fight. I hunger for a Mogadorian to saunter into the backyard so that I may finally seek revenge. It's an easy day. No fire. Mostly just me lifting things and manipulating them while they are suspended in the air. The last 20 minutes pass with Henry throwing objects at me, sometimes just allowing them to fall to the ground, other times deflecting them in a way that emulates a boomerang so that they twist in the air and go blazing back towards Henri. At one point a meat tenderizer flies back so fast that Henry dives face first into the snow to keep from being hit by it. I laugh. Henry does not. Bernie Koza lies on the ground the whole time watching us, seeming to offer his own encouragement. After we are done I shower, do my homework, and sit at the kitchen table for dinner. So there is a party this Saturday that I'm going to go to. He looks up at me, stops chewing. Whose party? Mark James's. Henry looks surprised. All that's over, I say before he can object. Well, you know best, I suppose. Just remember what's at stake. End of chapter 4. Chapter 25. And then the weather warms. Brisk winds, bitter cold, and continuous snow showers are followed by blue skies and 50-degree temperatures. The snow melts. At first there are standing puddles in the driveway and the yard, the road wet with the sounds of splashing tires, but after a day all the water drains and evaporates and the cars pass as they do on any other day. A lull in the action. A brief reprieve before Old Man Winter takes up the reins again. I sit on the porch waiting for Sarah, staring up at the night sky full of twinkling stars and a full moon. A thin, knife-like cloud cuts the moon in two and then quickly disappears. I hear the crunch of gravel under tires, then headlights come into view and the car pulls into the driveway. Sarah gets out of the driver's side. She's dressed in dark grey pants flared at the ankles, a navy blue cardigan sweater beneath a beige jacket. Her eyes are accentuated by the blue shirt peeking out where the jacket's zip ends. Her blonde hair falling past her shoulders. She smiles coyly and looks at me, fluttering her eyelashes as she approaches. There are butterflies in my stomach. Almost 3 months together and yet I still grow nervous when I see her. A nervousness that's hard to imagine time will ever assuage. You look gorgeous, I say. Well, thank you, she says, and bobs a curtsy. You don't look so bad yourself. I kiss Sarah on the cheek. Then Henry walks out of the house and waves to Sarah's mum, who is sitting in the passenger seat of the car. So you'll call when you're ready to be picked up, right? Henry asks me. Yes, I say. We walk to the car and Sarah gets behind the wheel. I sit in the back. She's had her learner's permit for a few months now, which means she can drive so long as a licensed driver sits in the passenger seat beside her. Her actual driver's test is on Monday, 2 days away. She's been anxious about it ever since making the appointment over winter break. She backs out of the driveway and pulls away, eventually flipping the visor down and smiling at me through the mirror. I smile back. So how was your day, John? Her mother turns and asks me. We make small talk. She tells me of the trip to the mall that the two of them made earlier in the day, and how Sarah drove. I tell her about playing with Bernie Koza in the yard, and about the run we went on after. I don't tell her about the training session that lasted for 3 hours in the backyard after the run. I don't tell her how I split the dead tree's trunk straight down the middle through telekinesis, or how Henry threw knives at me that I deflected into a sandbag 50 feet away. I don't tell her about being lit on fire or the objects that I lifted and crushed and splintered. Another kept secret. Another half-truth that feels like a lie. I would like to tell Sarah. I somehow feel that I'm betraying her by keeping myself hidden, and over the last few weeks the burden has really begun to weigh on me. But I also know I have no other choice. Not at this point, anyhow. So it's this one? Sarah asks. Yes, I say. She pulls into Sam's driveway. He paces at the end of it, dressed in jeans and a wool sweater. He looks up at us with a deer caught in the headlights blank stare. There is gel in his hair. I've never seen gel in his hair before. He walks to the side of the car, opens the door, and slides in beside me. "Hi, Sam," Sarah says, then introduces him to her mum. Sarah reverses the car out of the driveway and pulls onto the road. Both of Sam's hands are planted firmly on the seat in nervousness. Sarah turns down a road I've never seen before and makes a right turn into a winding driveway. 30 or so cars are parked along the side of it. At the end of the driveway, surrounded by trees, is a large, two-story house. We can hear the music well before we reach the house. "Geez, nice house," Sam says. "You guys be good in there," Sarah's mom says. "And be safe. Call if you need anything, or if you can't get a hold of your father," she says, looking at me. "Will do, Mrs. Hart," I say. We get out of the car and begin walking to the front door. 2 dogs run up to us from the side of the house, a golden retriever and a bulldog. Their tails are wagging and they're sniffing spastically at my pants, smelling the scent of Bernie Kosar. The bulldog is carrying a stick in his mouth. I wrestle it away from him and throw it across the yard and both dogs sprint after it. "Dozer and Abby," Sarah says. "I take it Dozer is the bulldog?" I ask. She nods and smiles at me as though in apology. I'm reminded how well she must know this house. I wonder if it's odd for her to be back now, with me. "This is a horrible idea," Sam says. He looks at me. I'm only now realizing that. "Why do you think so?" "Because only 3 months ago the guy who lives here filled both our lockers with cow manure and hit me in the back of the head with a meatball during lunch. And now we're here." "I bet Emily is already here," I say, and nudge him with my elbow. The door opens into the foyer. The dogs come rushing in past us and disappear into the kitchen, which lies straight ahead. I can see that Abby is now holding the stick. We're met with loud music that we have to yell over to be heard. People are dancing in the living room. There are cans of beer in most of their hands, a few people drinking bottled water or soda. Apparently Mark's parents are out of town. The whole football team is in the kitchen, half of them wearing their Letterman jackets. Mark comes up and hugs Sarah. Then he shakes my hand. He holds my gaze for a second and then looks away. He doesn't shake Sam's hand. He doesn't even look at him. Perhaps Sam is right. This may have been a mistake. "Happy you guys could make it. Come on in. Beer's in the kitchen." Emily stands in the far corner talking to other people. Sam looks her way, then asks Mark where the bathroom is. He points the way. "Be right back," Sam says to me. Most of the guys are standing around the island in the middle of the kitchen. They look at me when Sarah and I enter. I look at each of them in turn, and then grab a bottle of water from the ice bucket. Mark hands Sarah a beer and opens it for her. The way he looks at her makes me realize yet again just how little I trust him. And I realize now just how bizarre this whole situation is. Me, being in his house now, with Sarah, his ex-girlfriend. I'm happy that Sam is with me. I reach down and play with the dogs until Sam comes out of the bathroom. By then Sarah has made her way to the corner of the living room and is talking to Emily. Sam tenses beside me when he realizes that there is nothing else for us to do but walk up to them and say hello. He takes a deep breath. In the kitchen 2 of the guys have lit a corner of the newspaper on fire for no other reason than to watch it burn. "Make sure you compliment Emily," I say to Sam as we approach. He nods. "The you guys are," Sarah says. "I thought you had left me all by my lonesome." "Wouldn't dream of it," I say. "Hi, Emily. How are you?" "I'm good," she says, then to Sam, "I like your hair." Sam just looks at her. I nudge him. He smiles. "Thank you," he says. "You look very nice." Sarah gives me a knowing look. I shrug and kiss her on the cheek. The music has grown even louder. Sam talks to Emily, somewhat nervously, but she laughs and after a while he eases a little. So are you okay? Sarah asks me. Of course. I'm with the prettiest girl at the party. How could things be better? Oh shush, she says, and pokes me in the stomach. The four of us dance for an hour or so. The football players keep drinking. Somebody shows up with a bottle of vodka, and not long after that one of them, I don't know which, throws up in the bathroom so that the smell of vomit wafts throughout the whole downstairs. Another one passes out on the living room sofa, and some of the others draw with marker on his face. People keep filtering in and out of the doorway leading to the basement. I have no idea what is going on down there. I haven't seen Sarah for the past 10 minutes. I leave Sam and walk through the living room and the kitchen, then walk up the stairs. White, thick carpet, walls lined with art and family portraits. Some of the bedroom doors are open. Some are closed. I don't see Sarah. I walk back downstairs. Sam is standing sullenly by himself in the corner. I walk over to him. Why the long face? I ask. He shakes his head. Don't make me lift you in the air and turn you upside down like the guy in Athens. I smile. Sam doesn't. I just got cornered by Alex Davis, he says. Alex Davis is another of Mark James's brood, a wide receiver for the team. He's a junior, tall and thin. I've never talked to him before, and likewise know little else about him. What do you mean by cornered? We just talked. He saw that I've been talking to Emily. I guess they dated over the summer. So what? Why does that bother you? He shrugs. It just sucks, and it bothers me, okay? Sam, do you know how long Sarah and Mark dated? For a long time. 2 years, I say. Does it bother you? He asks. Not in the least. Who cares about her past? Besides, look at Alex, I say, and nod to him standing in the kitchen. He is slumped against the kitchen counter, his eyes aflutter, a thin layer of sweat glistening on his forehead. Do you really think she misses being with that? Sam looks at him, shrugs. You're a good dude, Sam. Good. Don't get down on yourself. I'm not down on myself. Well then, don't worry about Emily's past. We don't have to be defined by the things we did or didn't do in our past. Some people allow themselves to be controlled by regret. Maybe it's a regret, maybe it's not. It's merely something that happened. Get over it. Sam sighs. He's still wrestling with it. Go on. She likes you. There's nothing to be scared of, I say. I am, though. Best way to deal with fear is to confront it. Just walk up to her and kiss her. I bet you she kisses you back. Sam looks at me and nods, then goes to the basement, where Emily is hanging out. The two dogs come wrestling into the living room. Tongues dangling. Tails wagging. Dozer drops his chest to the ground and waits for Abby to come near enough, and then he jumps at her and she jumps away. I watch them until they disappear up the stairs, playing tug-of-war with a rubber toy. It's 1/4 till midnight. A couple is making out on the couch across the room. The football players are still drinking in the kitchen. I'm starting to get sleepy. I still can't find Sarah. Just then one of the football players comes rushing up the basement stairs, a crazed, frantic look in his eyes. He rushes to the kitchen sink, turns on the water as high as it will go, and begins throwing open the kitchen cupboard doors. There's a fire downstairs, he says to the guys nearby. They begin filling pots and pans with water, and one by one they rush down the stairs. Emily and Sam come up the stairs. Sam looks shaken. What's wrong? I say. The house is on fire. How bad? Is any fire good? And I think we started it. We, knocked a candle into a curtain. Sam and Emily both look disheveled and have clearly been making out. I make a mental note to congratulate Sam later. Have you seen Sarah? I ask Emily. She shakes her head. More guys rush up the stairs, Mark James with them. There is fear in his eyes. For the first time I smell smoke. I look at Sam. "Go outside," I say. He nods and takes Emily's hand and they leave together. Some of the others follow, but some stay where they are, watching with drunken curiosity. A few people stand around stupidly patting the football players on the back as they rush up and down the basement stairs, cheering them on as though it's all a joke. I go to the kitchen and grab the largest thing left, a medium-sized metal pot. I fill it with water and then go downstairs. Everybody has evacuated aside from us battling the blaze, which is far bigger than I expected. Half the basement is consumed in flames. Dousing it with the little water I have left is completely futile. I don't try, and instead drop the pot and dash back up. Mark comes flying down. I stop him in the middle of the stairway. His eyes are swimming in booze, but through it I can see that he is terrified, that he is desperate. "Forget about it," I say. "It's too big. We have to get everyone out." He looks down the stairs at the fire. He knows that what I've said is true. The tough guy front is gone. There is no more pretending. "Mark!" I yell. He nods and drops the pot and we go back up together. "Everybody out. Now!" I yell when I get to the top of the stairs. Some of the drunker ones don't move. Some of them laugh. One person says, "Where's the marshmallows?" Mark slaps him across the face. "Get out!" he screams. I rip the cordless phone from the wall and shove it into Mark's hand. "Dial 911, I yell over the loud voices and the music that still blares from somewhere like a soundtrack to the erupting pandemonium. The floor is getting warm. Smoke begins to billow up from beneath us. Only then do people take it seriously. I start pushing them towards the door. I dart past Mark as he begins dialing and rush through the house. I take the stairs 3 at a time and kick through the open doors. One couple is making out on a bed. I yell at them both to get out. Sarah's nowhere to be found. I sprint back down the stairs and through the door into the dark, cold night. People are standing around, watching. Some of them I can tell are excited by the prospect of the house burning down. Some laugh. I can feel myself begin to panic. "Where is Sarah?" Sam stands at the back of the crowd, which must total 100 people. I run to him. "Have you seen Sarah?" I ask. "No," he says. I look back at the house. People are still coming out. The basement windows glow red, flames licking against the panes of glass. One of them is open. Black smoke pours out of it and floats high in the air. I weave through the crowd. Just then an explosion rattles the house. All the basement windows shatter. Some of the people cheer. The flames have reached the first floor, and they're moving fast. Mark James stands at the front of the crowd, unable to divert his gaze away from it. His face is illuminated by the orange glow. There are tears in his eyes, a look of despair, the same look that I saw in the eyes of the Lorien on the day of the invasion. What an odd thing it must be to watch everything you've ever known be destroyed. The fire spreads with hostility, with disregard. All Mark can do is watch. Flames are beginning to rise up past the first floor windows. We can feel the heat on our faces from where we stand. "Where's Sarah?" I ask him. He doesn't hear me. I shake him by the shoulder. He turns and looks at me with a blankness that suggests he still doesn't believe what his own eyes are telling him. "Where's Sarah?" I ask again. "I don't know," he says. I start to weave through the crowd looking for her, getting more and more frantic. Everyone is watching the blaze. The vinyl siding has begun to bubble and melt. The curtains in the windows have all burned away. The front door stands open, smoke pouring out of the top of it like an upside-down waterfall. We can see all the way into the kitchen, which is an inferno. On the left side of the house the fire has reached the second floor. And that's when we all hear it. A long terrible scream. And dogs barking. My heart drops. Every person strains to listen while hoping like hell we didn't hear what we all know we did. And then it comes again. Unmistakable. It comes in a torrent and this time it doesn't let up. Gasps filter throughout the crowd. "Oh no," Emily says. "Oh God no, please no." End of chapter 25. Next video would be available on Thursday. Enjoy. Also, Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling are available on this channel. One more thing, please consider liking and subscribing. Have a great day ahead.